Folks, joining us right now, the man, the myth, the legend, Mike from around the world. Mike, how you doing tonight?
Pastor Paul, good to see you this evening.
Well, Mike, it's going to be a great program. It took us 15 minutes to go live on the main channel. We had a picture taken on a FAA weather cam from Alaska on August the 21st, 2020. We have two pictures, one taken from one cam and the other one taken from a different camera. One is taken of the sky over the Yukon River and the other one from Begley Lake. And there's some type of strange object in the sky. Now, this was sent to us by an employee of the FAA, and it was captured on an FAA cam. We've sent these to you. I don't know what in the world I'm looking at. If it's a Photoshop or a smudge, I don't know how we could smudge two different cameras, different places, but maybe. Is it a strange planet out there? Is it a holographic image? Is it Project Blue Beam? What's going on, Mike?
Well, it's a pretty good image. It would be awesome if somebody could dig up the pictures they also took from the South Pole. It was about 7 frames from the South Pole with that same dithert pattern. So it was somewhat similar. That's one of those. That's one of those photos that I'll tell you what. If it's real, Pastor Paul,
yes,
we're going to see a lot more of that photo. At that time, everybody's going to rush to see, is that they're going to try and confirm that 1,000 different ways. But there's already partial confirmation from the South Pole with that same type of image with that dithering.
Okay, we're looking at it again, Mike. Again, there it is, folks. Very plain. It's taken from over Begley Lake. The camera, and I'm looking right here. It's Begley Lake. The camera was facing south. It was camera number 10396. This red planet is pictured. You could see it from the naked eye. The individual sent it to us is a employee of the FAA. It was taken on an FAA weather camera. Mike, are you saying that this same object was seen 7 different picture frames from the South Pole? Are you confirming that?
Yeah, something just like that, with near the same, similar patterns. You can do computer matching of surface patterns and find them. The patterns were sitting a bit east if you're looking at that object, which also is kind of confirmation because they're the exact same patterns that the type rotation has taken place. Does that mean it's now something very funny? During the I believe it was the 1100s. During the 1100s, there was an object. Lots of people thought it was a secondary moon. There was an object seen in our atmosphere for about 7 or 8 days. And they were so frightened, they thought it would, kind of crash into our moon. But of course it didn't. It was a passing object. Well, that date also correlates to some of the other celestial phenomena. Once you start doing the modeling with the timetables, it correlates with a lot of celestial phenomena during that date. That's when it started, all the way up to the 1400s, where we had at least 2.5 years of dark skies. During that time span, trees were dying all over the place, and of course this world went through an abrupt change. Well, that just so happens to be one of the quarter marks in the return of a cyclic pattern, a larger pattern. So during that time span, they call it the tail end of one of the long durational seasons of our solar system. And it killed a lot of life on this planet. But the trees in particular, they were starved of light. They weren't producing food. Growth was almost stopped. It was almost halted for at least 2 to 3 years. If that picture is real and it was seen this year, I'm going to keep using that term but if that thing is real, then we can look forward to a phenomena in the winter, right? Now think of this, because these objects that are coming into our solar system, they are telltale markers of our movement, right? In relation to a secondary sun's system or the outer bands, what have you. If that is the case, some of the temperature swings that we're about to really, and we're talking about heat, we're not talking about cold, because this winter coming up is going to tell us all about the heat we're about to face. I think that's going to frighten quite a few people, but the heat factor during this winter, mixed with the all the moisture that's being let loose all over the earth, is going to cause conditions, Pastor Paul, that are they're just beyond words.
What kind of heat are you? Wait a minute, you're talking heat in the winter?
Yeah, we're because as we continue to move, we have definitive changes in our atmosphere. And again, you can't, when you're looking for changes in the atmosphere, you can't do it week to week, you can't do it month to month. You have to do this in sets of about 2 to 5 year sets. And when you look at those 2 to 5 year sets, it gives you a good idea of our weather patterns and how they're changing. When you start correlating geological activity with the atmosphere, then you know you have an external force at play. It's not just internal, it's not just the sun. And then when the sun's activity correlates with atmospheric phenomena and geological activity, well, then you know you really have an external force at play. And of course, we're fighting galactic cosmic rays still. They're still building. More and more radiation is still pouring in, which is altering everything. But the heat factor is certainly taking a toll on life on the surface of this planet. Crops are dead all over the place, and the crops that are left are being damaged by just outrageous weather phenomena. This in conjunction with unexpected passages of rocks, debris, large objects, small objects. There were 2 sizable objects last week that were quite sizable. And what I mean sizable, there's some objects sometimes that pass this Earth that we're talking about continental-sized objects that are moving extremely fast.
What?
right outside of the moon's orbit, that they're picked up on the European Space Agency's equipment. They're picked up on the USA equipment, but they have filtering. When you see things on the website, right, when they're giving you data from the web, from sensors, from anything, that data does not go straight to the web. That data goes through several different types of computer systems that will filter data. And that data that's being filtered, you'll never know it's being filtered unless it lasts for at least 2 seconds or more. But they're always filtering data. They even have insertion programs where they can insert data to make it look like you're not missing any. And so sometimes people are fooled by information on the web. Is this the Nibiru thing? No, this is not anything related to Nibiru. This is something that's intermediate, something in between. So this is something unexpected. And if it's real, it's going to, these objects, I'm just not going to say one, but these objects are going to be under the influence of the sun. And it's a possibility that 1 or 2 of the objects may lose their control. In other words, they may act sporadically in the heavens and cause us some more atmospheric issues.
Folks, Mike from Around the World's with us. Again, this picture, Brock, I'll put it back up again. This one here is from Bradley Lake in Alaska. It was caught on a FAA advisory weather cam. The camera was facing south. It's camera number 10396. It captured this what looks like a planet. Maybe, I don't know what that is. It's a strange sight. It's a fearful sight if you've seen it, and it was out in the middle of nowhere, of course, and it's over Bradley Lake, and it was captured It's a red-looking planet, and we're not saying it's Planet X, we're not saying it's Nibiru, but then the same afternoon, August 21st, 2020, a few miles away over the Yukon River Bridge, there's another FAA advisory weather cam. This one is facing southeast, and it's camera number 10323, and this was sent to us by a employee of the FAA who did not want to give their name, and that's fine, but wanted us to see it, wanted Mike around the world to see it. We had gotten it to Mike this week. I've been sitting on this for several days, and Heidi has been sitting on this till tonight. We wanted to break it out tonight. Now, we tried to put that picture on our thumbnail, Mike, and we had to try 7 times to go live on the main channel. It would not let us go live till we removed the picture and put up another photo of some asteroids flying by, and they let us go live. So there's something about this photo that's pretty. You're saying there's 7 photos taken that would confirm that are very similar to this one. They were taken from the South Pole, and you've seen those, Mike. I take it you've seen those. Are they similar?
Yeah, that's not I'm just surprised that I'm sure that somebody on the internet has they have those images. They didn't stay up on the internet long, if they were on the internet at all, but some of the main data, yeah, I've seen that, but it's offset, which also, looking at the pattern from the photo you sent me, comparing that to the patterns of the several frames, it looks like it rotated. It looks like the exact same object. I would suspect that as we continue to go into the winter months, more and more people will begin to see this thing because of its motion, so to speak. But there's something else. There's another something we're dealing with. It's not hiding behind the sun. It makes a passage. I don't know what that thing is, but it makes a passage that causes it to be somewhat elusive. But during midday, people have been beginning to notice this, especially pilots have beginning to notice this at higher altitude. So if this thing is real, and I have to say, if this thing is real, right? Because if it's real, don't worry, we're coming back to this subject and we'll just pour out the details. But if it's real, one of the issues, one of the cautions with this is any celestial object that's close to this Earth, right, will imbalance us. And if you're looking at an object like that, I would estimate that object is probably about this, maybe equal to the size of our moon, if not less, what I would say. I don't think it's that far out there because of in that picture you have hazy atmospheric conditions, right? And if something was way out there, right, unless it was on fire, right, you probably would not be able to notice it given the light that's coming off the surface, which lets me know that this object is quite close. Could it be something out there that close that people couldn't see? Of course it could. It depends on the pattern it follows in relation to the Earth's orbit. It could be right there in front of our faces, and we would not notice, nobody would notice this unless they, during the midday, took a look at the sky and would see a bit of distortion. A bit of distortion.
And it wouldn't be there long either, would it, Mike? Just for a few seconds?
No, it wouldn't. Because if it were something with a slow type of orbit like the moon, everybody would have noticed it. Right. But if it has a type of rotation, and what I mean, a type of rotation where it comes in proximity to the Earth, and that's part of the arc, and then it swings back out for another 2 weeks, and then it comes back in. We're just seeing a portion of the arc. That has absolutely happened with a few smaller objects, right? That have been observed. So they have wacky, strange orbits, especially when they have larger objects that they're anchored with. They can absolutely do that, which means it would appear in our atmosphere for about maybe 8-9 hours, and then it's gone for another 2, 3, 4 weeks. Then it comes back and does the same thing. Then it's gone 2, 3, 4 weeks.
So is it on some kind of oblong orbit?
But a very small one, very small one.
Okay.
and it would have to be, if it were the size of our moon, it would also be caught in a type of I'll say gravitational force, where it would follow lines of force that are parallel to probably our southern hemisphere, a little lower than the southern hemisphere, going back to the sun, which makes it almost impossible to see unless you're in the southern hemisphere, right? By the way, which is burning up. But that's where you would have to be. You'd have to be, South Australia. You'd have to be somewhere in South America at a very low parallel. But they don't allow astronomers in certain portions of South America anymore. You can't bring your telescope down there. They will not permit it. And you're not going to the South Pole either to see anything. They won't permit it. So there are a lot of things they stop astronomers from doing now. And there are some forbidden zones. You just can't take pictures or anything.
Is that because, Mike, what's coming up from the south is, if you're in the South Pole, it'd be very visible, and it'd give us some answers to some of these, whether it be Planet X, Nibiru, Planet Number 9, a binary system, or whatever we may see, or maybe other incoming objects. They just can't let the public know.
It's very active in that region of the Earth, as far as you can see. It's very active, and I believe that would just bring up more problems than anything else, because there's always something in the sky there, always. And then they would have to, explain these things. People would have photos, and they would have videos, and no one would deny it due to the sheer number of confirming photos, right? So in their minds, it's best not to let anybody down in those regions where people could have that type of reaction to that, because their time will be tied up explaining what's in the atmosphere. People would be so taken by what they see in the southern hemisphere, Pastor Paul, they would stop protesting. They would stop indulging in just about everything, and they would say, hey, give us an answer. And what is this stuff? Because just last year there was something that somewhat blanked out the sky in the southern hemisphere for a couple of hours, and then it was gone. But it was huge. It was like looking at something about the size of maybe 13, 14 football fields, and it just kind of, it looked like a shadow, and then it kind of left, and it, startled people. But of course, right now, since the fires are starting to burn, nobody's going down there.
And of course, folks, the Bible does say that Jesus said these words. He said, there will be great signs and fearful sights in the heavens. And another scripture says that men's hearts will fail them for fear, for looking after those things coming upon the earth, for the powers of heaven shall be shaken. Okay? So then we'll see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. When these things begin to come to pass, he said, look up, lift up your head, your redemption draweth nigh. One thing about the pictures we just showed you, first of all, we were censored. We could not go live with that picture as our thumbnail, but we've showed it here during the broadcast. It was nowhere. This picture has never been seen publicly. It was sent to us by an employee of the FAA weather, the federal government, and it was caught on these two different cams. Now, here's the thing about it. It wasn't just sitting out there for hours and everybody could take a picture. This is a cam that in moments of seconds caught that. And from two different cams. And then Mike confirms today that there are at least 7 other frames have been taken out of the South Pole that would pretty well be close to matching what we're looking at. And what it means, what it is, we can't say yet. But like Mike said, if that's not a fake, we will be hearing more about this image later. But remember also, they're going to do everything they can to camouflage this kind of stuff. So we're going to keep a close eye on what's going on this. Mike, I want to move into another area, though, and we'll come back to this in a second, folks. Lightning bolts killed 100 sheep in India, and then in Argentina, snow and deep frost killed 100 cows. Excuse me, I'm wrong by this. I got the wrong story. 100,000 sheep and 5,000 cattle in Argentina. Now it's their winter down there, but still, Mike, how in the world does an apocalyptic snowstorm kill that many animals? I mean, what is going on?
Well, these are extremes. Has anybody ever been you ever been in just a day where it's real hot in the sunlight?
Yes.
But it's real hot in the sunlight, unreasonably hot, but you go in the shade, and it's really, really cool.
Yeah.
Right? You ever do that? That's an effect that the Earth is experiencing right now for the first time, which means in some portions of this Earth, it can be blistering hot. But in the shadows of the Earth, it's going to be, unequivocally cold, which can cause effects just like that. We're going to see some of that this winter, where we have extreme hots and extreme colds. And, the first time I noticed that in real life was in the desert, of course. That was in Bahrain. I noticed that in the sunlight, it was blistering hot in the morning. My right foot was in the sun, my left foot was in the shade, my left foot was freezing, and my right foot was burning up.
What?
Right, as soon as the sun hit it. So the more you have that direct light that's blocked, it has to be direct, and when it's not offset, but direct, right? Once it's blocked by an object, the shade of that object is going to be incredibly cold. This should also give everybody an idea about what's happening with the sun, what's happening with the Earth, because our orbit is soon to kind of alter a bit. It's going to change a bit. The sun's brightness in relation to the Earth, it's no longer offset. Our angle as we rotate around the sun is changing, and all these effects that will continue to change are going to cause massive issues. Not to mention, on a certain side of our sun, they found a temperature difference between one side of the sun and the other side, and that's not good. The sun itself emits heat, right? So how in the world can one side be hotter than the other? The only way that can happen is if something is beginning to draw energy from our sun and is headed out in one direction, and that's actually being observed right now. In fact, I think you'd be surprised at the number of probes that they have launched just to measure what the sun is doing. So we have temperature changes in the sun that make no sense unless you have a body out there that's beginning its process of drawing infrared photons, X-rays, things like that from our sun, cooling it off a few degrees. So we're having massive physical effects in our sun and in the Earth. And these things, as we get closer and closer to certain times, Pastor Paul, they're going to increase exponentially. That means, but think of it this way. Suppose today we have a good temperature of about 80 degrees, but we have something out there that's affecting our atmosphere, the sun, and everything else. That means every day we go forward, the temperature is going to go up a fraction of a degree in the sunlight and go down a fraction of a degree in the shade, right, on the dark side of the Earth, meaning that within months, we're going to have extremes in heat. When we shouldn't have 110, 120 degree temperatures in the middle of winter. And we should have cold, but not extreme cold in the middle of winter, right? And then when the Earth begins to change a bit more, we're going to see a reversal. All of this with increased moisture in the Earth is going to cause for wind and storms we're just not ready for. And we're going to have a mold problem. Mold is going to be a bad issue with all this moisture. Just today, we had more ice melts happening today. They have detected so far 84 viruses that have been released from the ice that have been dead. They date for about 20, 40, 80,000 years, and they just spring back to life. So, these some of the plagues that the Bible talks about, I wouldn't be surprised if they're coming from some of the melted ice. There was a scientist up there who just recently had his legs amputated from ancient bacteria. The bacteria simply got rubbed on his leg. It was rubbed on his leg because he had his leg immersed in some of that water. The bacteria ate through his skin. When it ate through his skin, somehow he spread it to the other, and they had to end up amputating his limbs. It was resistant to everything, even bleach. So that stuff is no joke. And more every single day, we have those types of bacteria and viruses that are just springing back to life from
Mike, is it possible when the dinosaurs were here, we always think that it was a massive asteroid that hit and killed them all, but I mean, could it have been some of these an ancient viruses that just wiped them out?
They know some did die from that basketball. They have observed, or they have dug up, when they dig up these bones, if they're able to find one intact with some skin and so forth and so on, you find that nice. They have found that their throats were shut, that their stomachs were gone, eaten up. You have organs around there where you can see they're not eaten up. So it was some type of flesh-eating disease that was eating some of these dinosaurs up from the inside out. Some of them had glass in their throats. That comes from volcanic activity, right. Not from meteors, from volcanic activity. Some of them had the strange type of spores, or some type of ancient spores in their throats, and just all sorts of weird stuff. And many of them were found without having eaten anything, right? Which means you can't have a T-Rex that's not eating, because if he's not eating, he's sick, right? And if he's sick, there are telltale signs in the bones. There was something that got a hold of some of these dinosaurs that put holes in their bones, and they were, they're preserved that way today. It's so funny that they won't, that would scare the public if the public found out, but there were some bad critters back in the day, and unfortunately, as the ice continues to melt, some of these critters are somewhat like some of the life forms we have today, which you can freeze for an indeterminate amount of time, and then they come right back to life. Frogs likewise, or certain lizards that we have like that. You can freeze them for hundreds, thousands of years, and they come right back to life. So we've got viruses like that are robust, immune to everything that we have, and they're no doubt they're spreading. They're spreading by birds, by insects, whatever that transportation means will be. But they're going to spread again. It's only a matter of time before they, make their circle around the globe as these insects migrate more and more.
Okay, now Mike from Around the World is with us here tonight. We're talking about some very strange pictures, of course, that were taken from the FAA weather cam up in Alaska. These were captured by a weather cam, just seconds on the cam, on two different weather cams. And also, Mike is saying there were 7 frames captured, very similar, from government cameras down in South Pole. Mike, you mentioned extreme weather changes. Brock just came and said, is the same temperature changes going to happen to the ocean water as well?
Yeah, the ocean's going to heat up. In fact, the oceans will heat up to such a degree that on the coastlines, I doubt if anybody will live on the coastlines, because humidity, can you imagine humidity being at about 125% on a continuous basis? 125% and above.
That's worse than the Amazon rainforest.
Yeah, that means you couldn't have a house on the coast because it would be eaten up by mildew, right? Mildew would form everywhere once you get that 100% humidity factor, and it persists. It also means molds, will start releasing toxins, and black mold will grow everywhere. It also means that certain species of critters will come up from the south and begin to occupy the coastlines. Many crops will die because, unfortunately, crops are susceptible to certain types of mold that will actually, take over our crops in high humidity environments. So as the oceans are heating up, which they are, because where it should be at certain depths of the ocean where it should be maybe 20 degrees or colder, right? You're talking about 600 degrees. You're talking about superheated fluid coming out from the earth in the ocean, and it's spreading. This phenomenon is spreading. It's killing everything. They still have cooked fish. We're talking about fish where if you jumped in the water, they're about 8.5 feet thick, and that's how many died. 8.5 feet thick, you would be treading fish.
What?
Fully cooked from these hot spouts that come up. Superheated water, by the way, when it's released from these internally held vats in the earth, it cooks everything on the way up, and the rest of the ocean water starts to mix with it, and then it cools. But it will cook everything that's down there first. So there's a lot of that happening. Also with these tides, with the red tides and some of the algae tides, some of the changes in the water due to red tides, which is happening all over the earth at the wrong times. They have since found that these are normally tied to some of these, this superheated water being released from inside the earth. And by the way, that water does not boil. Superheated water does not boil. It's held, it's pressurized. It can reach temperatures that are outrageous, and as soon as it hits the ocean water, it just begins to cook everything. So there's a lot of that in the earth, and it's going to continue to heat the earth. We have volcanic activity underneath the ocean that just, it is, if we could see the volcanic activity in the oceans, all of us would think we only have weeks left to live. That's how bad it is down there. So the NAVO has no-go zones down there. They have, basically quarantined certain areas off, both in the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean, especially the Atlantic, where we have a crack that continues to grow. And this crack, the depth of this crack, they believe, goes all the way down to, probably our planet's core somehow, because it's, just about every day it's releasing nickel. There's more and more nickel coming up from the Earth. You just don't have nickel that pops up from anywhere, but, it's releasing nickel. So, that's unusual, and it's been doing this for years, but the crack is becoming enormous. And it's also creating a brand new landmass in the Atlantic also. So we have the Atlantic, that bottom is rising up, and that will certainly do away with our East Coast. I don't believe the timing. Some of the scientists say, in a couple million years we'll see a new landmass. Don't believe that, because they already know about what's called instantaneous evolution. They already know about that, and they know that the Grand Canyons did not form over thousands of years. They know it took no more than a week or a month to form the Grand Canyons.
Folks, Mike from Around the World's with us tonight. Wow. Mike, got to move in. We got two more areas we've got to get to. One is, we know Hurricane Laura is doing devastation down there in Louisiana, and our prayers are going out to them. And, of course, that's part of that extreme weather condition you've been talking about. But we want to also talk tonight about the Middle East a little bit and the South China Sea. I mean, the United States and also Russia and that nuclear submarine that sank a few weeks ago, and now there's a radiation levels, and I've seen the charts.
Yes. Yep.
Mike, Russia says it didn't melt down, but what is your take on it?
Well, if they can detect heat plumes from satellites. We have satellites specially designed to detect heat plumes. It can, and radiation can penetrate water, so water's not going to hide the radiation that much. Upon detection, and it was detected, everything began to go bonkers. If you look at the timeline from that suspected time that it went down and did that, well, then you have that. I hate to hurt people's feelings, but don't expect Russia to tell the truth about anything like that. Don't do that. Because these guys, they have problems right outside of Alaska also. So don't expect Russia to tell the truth. It won't be the first time. It likely won't be the last. But the conditions and how it went down, now that's a different story, because no one knows if it was truly sabotage, if there was an outright attack, did somebody hit the wrong target? They don't know. And believe it or not, when things like that happen underneath the waters, they can cover it up pretty good for a while anyway. But radiation can be detected from our satellites, so they're not going to fool us. They're just not going to fool us when something like that takes place. But I suspect it's not going to be the last nuclear accident I really don't. I just don't think so. And in fact, I would go so far as to say that very, very soon we should have some type chemical weapons accident in the northern hemisphere, because the northern hemisphere is one of the targeted areas should anything ever happen war-wise in the world. It's already agreed upon that they will waste the northern hemisphere. In other words, it's somewhat legal to utilize those type weapons during extreme conflict in the northern hemisphere, but no one will touch the southern hemisphere.
Well, wait a minute. It's agreed upon that we can waste the northern hemisphere. Okay, time out. Who agreed on wasting the northern hemisphere, Mike? Are we talking deep state?
Well, believe it or not, a long time ago, when they were at the end of World War II, they began to have the Cold War, of course, and during that Cold War, they began to contemplate what would happen if we unleashed weapons, or some rogue country got a hold of weapons, or we just lost containment of who has the weapons. And so they came up with a type of hidden accord, and this hidden accord, it will allow or permit a certain number of people to die. It will permit certain portions of just about every country to be absolutely destroyed. They have already mapped out what would happen if portions of America wiped out. They already know who they would forbid to be saved. That's in there too. And in fact, there's kind of like a roadmap, right? They have several different scenarios that could happen in the world, but they have the perfect roadmap to their perfect conditions should any of those things happen. War is is one constant, but you also have natural disasters. For example, suppose we have a super cane in America. A super cane will be a hurricane or a few hurricanes in one central area that would just destroy the infrastructure. And it would also flood quite a few areas. If that were to happen, they've already agreed to stall FEMA in a lot of ways. They've already agreed to let a big portion of the people die off. They permit these things. And during a disaster like that, you're not going to argue about who's not showing up. You just want your life saved. But unfortunately, they're going to let certain people die out. And if that were to ever happen also, they would most certainly do something with communications. Now, here's the kicker. If we have a natural disaster and you still can use your cell phone, it's not a big deal. If we have a natural disaster and something happens to your cell phone, right, that's a big deal. You better believe that's the beginning of a chain of events, and they're going to start to limit things. They'll only do this due to resource, when they have resource issues like we do right now. Everybody out there, we have resource issues. You can go to your retail stores. I think I said something about this a long time ago, but you can go to your retail stores and you're not going to see the same variety you used to have. You can go to your grocery store. You're going to start seeing certain companies are making money in the grocery stores, and other companies are now excluded. They have shut down factory after factory after factory, and many of them are being converted for military usage. As far as what that is, well, I guess everybody will find that out when it happens. But many places who were once, retail chains, they're gone. Most of the malls are starting to shut down also because they can't afford to pay rent and have nobody rent those spaces. So you have other companies coming in to take that over. Normally, they'll be reserved for logistics, kind of like Walmart was, right? So this will continue to happen, continue to, shock people. People who are watching, other people are just going to become complicit, and they're going to deal with it. But right now, the crunch in clothing, has anybody ever looked at clothing? Clothing has gone up. Cotton has gone up. Most of your things pertaining to crops, they have gone up. Synthetic things, the price is down, but natural wear like cotton things, stuff like that, has gone way up. The reason why is because most of our crops are suffering right now. They're suffering from radiation. Some of the GMO plans did not work out quite right. Most of the GMO GMO was to make plants immune from the radiation we would be exposed to, so they would still yield a crop. That's why they had GMO crops in the first place. And some of the exotic insects that are being pushed up from the south to the north, they had to make them somewhat robust against them, but it's not working too well because we're dealing with these conditions are changing a little bit too much, and so they have to go back to the drawing board to make more, GMO stuff. And sooner or later, many people will eat vegetable meat, meaning that something's going on with the meat. They can't continue to produce the meat like they do, right? We'll still have food and stuff. It's just not going to be the food that we're used to eating.
Are we going to have to eat tofu? I mean, I just can't. I mean, look, I'm losing weight now, Mike. I'm on a real strenuous diet with the shakes. I'm shaking this thing off. Okay, I don't mean I'm having the shakes. I mean I'm drinking the protein shakes and all the good vitamins in it and really, really, really good stuff. It's not even stuff you buy in the store. It's really good. And so I'm going to lose some weight. Have been going to keep doing. I got to get the weight off, and get the blood pressure right and all that. I want to ask you a question though. What if we have to eat spam? I mean, tofu, spam, artificial or genetically modified food. It's really feeling weird out there. Tonight I was looking for just a piece of chicken with a bone in it, and I called 3 restaurants, and they said all we have is boneless. All we have is boneless. I can't deal with that, Mike. I just can't.
Well, these are. I would suggest to everybody. Anybody who's a soldier, anybody who's ever gone out to what they call the field, when they first go out to the field, Pastor Paul, one of the first things that will mentally get to you is your dietary changes, because when you go to the field, you can't have what you used to have when you were not in the field. You can't have sweets, you can't have your gum and all this stuff. I would suggest people to begin to downgrade the demand of their palate, which means their taste. Start backing down from sugars, not so much to lose weight and all that stuff, but so that you don't crave sugars, right? People should get adapted to not flooding their taste buds with tons of sodas and juices and all that. Kind of back down a little bit so you know what it's like just to have water, just to have plain bread, crackers, or something like that, so that your taste buds will begin to adapt and change. And the reason why I'm saying this is because some of the food choices you're going to have, you're not going to like. I certainly am not going to like vegetables that are made to look like hamburgers or something like that. I don't want that stuff. I'll go eat tree bark before I do that. And but these things are happening. And if you look in your work, but again, we're not going to run out of these things. They're going to be replaced.
Yep.
And they're going to be replaced for people's health. They're going to be replaced because we have a serious issue with our crops, and there's no way they can feed all of America and supply things to America, given the land is becoming a very tight commodity these days. There's no way they can continue to produce for all of America, and then try to build up the national granary for themselves. They can't do that. And we're importing grains, by the way, from other countries right now because something has happened to ours. Israel is our best friend in that respect because we're getting a lot of stuff from Israel.
Let's talk about the Middle East a little bit, Mike. We're running out low on time here. Some big things are happening. Number one, China, this is the South China Sea, but China's firing missiles at U.S. reconnaissance planes and even fired a missile, and they missed it by 50 miles, but they fired a missile that could destroy a carrier at a U.S. warship. And both of these the plane and the ship were in international waters. China's acting as if they own the entire South China Sea. While that's going on, we have in the Middle East, we have Saudi Arabia dealing with the fact that, again, the Houthi rebels are firing missiles from Yemen into Saudi Arabia, and so Saudi Arabia has to intercept those missiles using U.S. technology to do that. And then while that was going on, Greece ratified a deal with Egypt on how to deal with Turkey because Turkey is threatening Greece. And of course, Egypt is also concerned that Turkey will try to take over General Haftar and try to take over Libya. So Egypt is standing up. And then we've got an Israeli rabbi early this morning who got off a bus and was stabbed to death by a Palestinian man in an Israeli city. Tension everywhere. Mike, what's your take on what's going on in the Middle East?
Oh, we're close to the trumpets. I guess you could say we're close to a time where some of the actions will be irreversible. This while, have you noticed that some of the old political things that used to attract our attention, like these nuclear deals and all this, is starting to hit the back burner, and some of the more major things are coming out. For example, Saudi Arabia, they're about to have an upscaled issue with what they're doing, and they're trying to play the fence on both sides. It's not working. Which means they're going to eventually, everybody's going to turn on Saudi Arabia, and they're going to have to somewhat split up that kingdom. It's going to have to be split up. And then you have this other figure in Saudi Arabia now. And you know what? We wondered how, as the chaos increases in Saudi Arabia, believe me, there's already a dark element rising in that province. But then you have Egypt, and watch Jordan. You have Egypt, who has gotten their military together. They have dispatched a portion of their military already. You have the USA and Israel, who are putting up missile defense systems all over the place to counter the Russian missile defense systems and offensive weapons that Russia has put out there. Russia still has the largest defense net in the Middle East anybody has ever seen. Russia does. So Israel is covered. She's covered. Israel's covered for now. But Pastor Paul, I have to, in these times, in these moments, especially now, knowing some of the tactical things that are happening, I really have to stay focused in prophecy, because I don't want to set myself up for failure. I know precisely what will take place, what it's going to evolve into, and I can't. One could easily lose focus of that. There's going to be a lot of upset people that won't understand why we're hitting those critical years where the saints are going to have a bit of confusion, because prophecy, like you teach, is not being taught enough. In other words, in prophecy states, God states very clear things, and nothing is going to go beyond those things, no matter how good things look. We're building up to a point where everything must be fulfilled. And part of that fulfillment is going to be quite shocking to a lot of saints, because they believe that Israel will never be touched. And unfortunately, that's not what prophecy says. But God, He's doing it for a reason, though.
No, you're right. Israel's going to be touched, as you know. In Zechariah chapter 14 specifically says it. And oh, by the way, it says it in Ezekiel 38. And Jesus even said, when you see the armies compassing Jerusalem, know that those things that are written, that the desolation is nigh. Okay, and so. Yeah, we can't go by what you know. You have to go by what the Scripture says. And it goes against what we know even at times, right?
That's right. It's like a twofold thing, because you have some right now that are coming out and they're like, oh, yes, the Jews are going to get what's coming to them. If they knew what I knew, they wouldn't say a word. They should have kept their mouths shut, but it's too late for them. But as these things evolve, it's going to become quite tasteless. These are, this is a time of Jacob's trouble. And, and it's really, this is coming. This is really coming. But as this thing does evolve, Pastor, people, because we're still dealing with celestial phenomena. We can't forget about that. And it will coincide at the same time. I know that sounded weird about 7 years ago when I said that.
Yeah.
But at the same time we have celestial issues, we're going to have to deal with a war. We won't deal with a war until those celestial issues come, because that's going to be good cover for everything.
Wow.
And we're not talking about, when that breaks out, so will everything else. I'm saying that because of how the minds of the enemy is in the Middle East. It is nothing like any enemy anybody has ever known. And they are quick to be on the same side 1 hour and be against each other the next, but no one is permitted to interfere with their internal fights. Well, both will turn on the one and destroy them. And this is part of one of the issues why America will get bit in this process eventually of all these deals that we're making. You're trying to broker deals, because once a Middle Eastern mindset is that, and all the countries have said it to America, that if a world war broke out, their loyalties would not be with the Western cult. It would not be with Western cultures. They already said this. But we're talking about nuclear-armed countries here. And so, it's coming close to that mark, and it will be confusing, and we will have celestial troubles beyond belief. The major thing for me, though, is the celestial trouble. Even beyond the war, the celestial troubles are really about to escalate.
And Mike, you have been saying this consistently for the last 7 years that we've been interviewing you, and you and I have been talking. You have consistently said the celestial problems, the space events, the issue that is coming, that we've been starting the whole program with tonight, will coincide with the hostilities and the chaos on the earth. And it matches biblical prophecy. And all through the Bible, look at Joel 2. It says the great and terrible day of the Lord, the sun will be dark and the moon will turn to blood. Okay? Revelation, fire will fall, asteroids, dead animals, a third of the world, all through earthquakes. Jesus tells you. Let me tell you something. This is why we went ahead and made this app. The Lord spoke to Heidi while we were in Israel. He came to her and said, Heidi, develop the new Apocalypse Watch. Make it an app. Make it so people can get it. And also make it so it we can download and we can put information on there that can't be censored, and information that will coincide with these prophecies and things that Mike's been talking about and Pastor Paul has been teaching. Brock, help people understand how to get the app. Play this. Folks, seriously, watch this. We'll be right back to you, Mike, from around the world. All right, folks, there you see it. It's very easy to get, okay? Here's what you do. If you have a phone, you can download it on your computer. You can download it on your iPad or tablet, or you can download it on your iPhone or your Android. We spent extra money to make sure the software worked for it all. Now, here's what you do. You go to the new Apocalypse app. The new Apocalypse Watch is what it's called, the new Apocalypse Watch. Somebody put the links. Our great moderators will put the links down there for you. Now listen, if you're using an iPhone, you need to use Safari as your browser, okay? If you're using an iPhone, you have to use Safari as your browser. If you're using an Android, you need to use Google Chrome as your browser. And as you purchase this app, there might be a little blue circle that's swirling. It doesn't happen to everybody, but it does happen to some. Don't redo it. It's going through. Just go ahead and click one of the numbers on the clock. Just go forward, okay? Just go forward as if it's went through, because it has, and it will work for you, okay? If there's any problems, we'll work with you. You can call in tomorrow, but that's what you need to do, and we will work with you to help you. It's just a very few people are having problems, but some are, so we help them through it. It is an amazing app, and it will help you so that what Mike is saying tonight, we will share with you what's happening around the world. Mike, final words. Are you going to drop a bomb on me tonight before you come back next Thursday? I mean, Deep State, we didn't even mention Laura. Oh, by the way, Laura Eisenhower, she is the great-granddaughter of President Dwight D. Eisenhower, has agreed to speak in this Deep State conference. She's gonna go after the Deep State because she knows a lot that needs to be released. Mike, what do you got for me? Last words.
Well, no big breaking things, but I would say during this week, especially during this week, I hope that everybody can cover their families with prayer, lots of prayer. The reason why is because minds will begin to change this week in directions that probably are not good directions. So I hope that everybody is praying for their families and keeping. And one last thing: if the saint of the house does not let a spirit work in the house, it cannot work in the house. The saint of the house is the door. So if the saint does not fall for things, lose their temper, lose control, right, backstep or do anything, then those spirits cannot work in the home. Everything that works in the home is what that saint of the house, or that gatekeeper, is going to allow in the house. So if they stand against it, it cannot work in the home. That goes, it trickles all the way down to the children. But when we lose control, we do open a door for spirits to work in our homes. And if we can shut those doors, we won't have to deal with it, because trust me, people will get enough of those things this week coming up.
Wow. All right, Mike. We'll see you next Thursday, Lord willing, at same time.
Same time.
See you next week. Thank you, Mike.
God bless you and keep you, Pastor Paul.
God bless. Mike, we're on the